Hello, welcome to SET's virtual event, the story behind Black Voices, Black Bodies, in collaboration with Word in Black. Thanks to you all so much for joining us. I'm Nicholas St. Fleur. I'm a general assignment reporter, associate editorial director of events, and host of STAT's health equity podcast, Color Code. Now, I'm sure you all know how this works by now, but we have a few quick housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you should see several icons. Use the chat feature to chat amongst yourselves or to send a message directly to the STAT events team. Please don't put your questions for us in the chat. But if you do have questions, and we really hope you have a bunch of questions because this is such an important conversation that we're having, please use the Q&A feature. Type in your questions. We'll try our best to answer them live. If you see a question in there that you particularly like, you can upvote it to make sure that it goes to the top so I can take a look at it and make sure that we ask it. We'll be taking questions throughout the conversation. So don't wait until the last 15 minutes to put in your question. If a brilliant idea pops up in your head, put it into that Q&A and I'll try to ask it. Again, thank you all so much for being here for this really important conversation. Now, here to join me for today's discussion, please welcome to our virtual stage, Devon Branker, photographer and visual artist, Anissa Durham, a health data reporter at Word in Black, Michelle Hobson, a senior consultant of learning and development, and Sudi Kamos, CEO of Cosmic by Sudi, K, also a former teacher, and then my colleague who makes sure that all of our photos at STAT look stellar, Crystal Milner, who's the picture editor here. Thanks to all of you for joining us. So to kind of start us off, I'd love if we went around and each of you gave us just a brief intro of kind of who you are and your involvement in this project. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the details, about your personal stories, about how this idea came together. But I'll start it off with Crystal. Crystal, who are you? Tell us about the project.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Crystal. I'm the picture editor here at STAT, as Nick mentioned. Um, we started this collaboration with Anissa and Word in Black at some point last year, maybe even last summer. And we just were throwing ideas around, and eventually we landed on a photo story that centered Black folks, Black voices, Black bodies around Ozempic and these new weight loss, well, really diabetic / weight loss drugs. And then from there, we kind of just, took off. We did some research. I think for me, one of the jumping off points was I think about Sarah Bartnum, who was brought over to England at one point. Her body was on display pretty much until she died, like living, and she was on display living. And then until even after she died, her body was on display, her organs were on display. I think her organs didn't even come out of the Paris museum that they were in until 1974. And then she was like officially laid to rest in South Africa in 2002. So those are kind of some of the, things that I was thinking about as we got started with this project. So
In terms of like the kind of Black bodies aspect to this.
correct, yes.
All right. Anissa, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do over there at Word in Black.
Hey everyone. So as you mentioned, I'm the health data reporter here at Word in Black. So I'm reporting on healthcare inequities and mental health in the Black community. I'm just kind of like piggyback off of Crystal. It was really important for us to center Black voices in this story. My whole job working for the Black press is doing that, but I don't think mainstream media, we see that enough. So it was a really great opportunity to do this collaboration with STAT and kind of like share this even further. But I was really interested to kind of dive into this obsession that we have in the US with weight loss, with body image, and what kind of impact has it had on the Black community. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll certainly hear some more of that from you as well. Devon, you're up next. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey y'all, my name is Devon. I'm a visual artist and photographer. I'm based originally from Orlando. And Crystal reached out to me from this project. Essentially, when I heard like the synopsis of it, I was really interested in it. As like a queer Black femme, I am very much aware of like my own body image. And I think that's probably one of the main things that gravitated to me for this project. I got a chance to work with Sudi, who's with us today, and then I also got a chance to work with Jonathan as well. And just being able to help create, the story and hear their stories as part of, you know, our collective like thoughts surrounding our own body image was really important for me.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Sudi, introduce yourself, please. Who are you?
My name is Sudi. I'm 33. I was interviewed by Anissa for this project last year. It started out as a survey, and then she reached out to me asking me if I wanted to um, do a face-to-face interview or a Zoom interview. And I said yes because I was very interested in talking about body image in this current day and age. And especially for me, having gone through this journey of self-hate to self-love, I really wanted to have my input in this project. So
Mm.
yes.
Yeah, the way you put it there, that journey from self-hate to self-love, I definitely want us to talk a bit more about that as well, because I think that resonates so strongly with many of us in this community, but also many of the folks who might be on this call, on this Zoom, watching in. Michelle, tell us a bit about yourself as well. Wonderful to
Hi,
have you.
my name is Michelle Hobson. I am a senior consultant in the learning and development industry, training, corporate training, if you will, and healthcare. I responded to a survey, and I was given the opportunity to participate. And I will tell you that it meant a lot to me, just because I've lived this journey of a challenge and self-perception. I wouldn't say self-hate, but self-disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
highly, with my body since I was 12 years old. That's the first moment in which I recognized that I didn't feel good about myself and others didn't feel good about it, and they wanted me to change it. So it's been a decades-long journey. I won't tell you how many decades. And I'm reading everyone else's story. I realized I wasn't alone. That was powerful. I have to tell you, it made an impact for me. And I'm just glad to be a participant.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. My wonderful colleague, Caitlin Clark, has shared in the chat some of these stories, both Sudi's stories and Michelle's story. If you haven't had the chance to check it out, please do. Please do. So to start us off, Crystal and Anissa, you touched a little bit on the origins of this project, but I'd love if you could kind of, tell us a little bit more. Both Sudi and Michelle said that they responded to a survey. Tell us a bit about, kind of how this came to be and how you came across finding sources like Sudi and Michelle. Crystal, if you want to start off.
Okay. I thought I need somebody to take it, but Anissa did, she started off with the survey. We shared it on our socials. Word and Black shared it on their socials. It was hard. That's why, I mean, it took like a year plus. And then we were also looking for more male participants. So as the assigning for photo editor, I initially wasn't really in that process, but as Anissa and I were talking about like how to get this project done, it was, kind of a little challenging finding folks. So I started calling churches and barbershops, talking to some nonprofit organizations, eating disorder resource and like support groups, just trying to let folks know, as many folks as possible know that we were doing this project. In some cases, I sent out the survey that Anissa initially worked on. And then eventually, slowly but surely, folks started to trickle in.
And Anissa, go right ahead.
Yeah, so to add to what Crystal mentioned, initially we had the first like survey that we were sharing, and I was getting some responses, but it just felt like I wasn't getting enough. So we kind of went back and redid the survey and kind of made the questions a little more pointed, just to like get more responses and people across the country. But as Crystal said, it was really difficult to get men on the record, to get men to fill out the survey or want to be interviewed. And on one end, like we wanted to have more of that diversity, but on the other end, it just added to like really the fact that this affects Black women more often than it does Black men. So I think that point kind of just like is highlighted throughout the story. But yeah, we were calling like Overeaters Anonymous groups and like churches and barbershops and just like our own contacts and sources and connections. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'm really proud of everyone that I was able to speak with.
And Anissa, tell me more about, I guess, the driving force behind, continuing to make these calls, continuing to want to tell this story, even though there were challenges as well. What kind of kept you going?
Yeah, I think this story isn't something that I had seen before, and I think it's something that we haven't seen, like it hasn't been spoken enough about. So I think that kept me going. And yeah, I just felt like this was really important and we needed to talk about it. And I know that it was just like that gut feeling that I knew this was an experience that people have, but I needed to find the right people who could share with
Mhm.
me like their lived experience and their personal journeys.
Definitely. And then before we get to Sudi about her personal story, both Anissa and Crystal, any more background you could kind of give the audience, I guess, from the health equity standpoint about this obesity drug revolution that we're seeing and access as well?
Yeah, so I will add that we were mostly using the survey to find people with lived experience. I was also reaching out to experts and physicians and people that are in this healthcare space that are prescribing GLP-1 drugs, that are like nutritionists or endocrinologists that are working with people that are living in larger bodies or having chronic illness to see like, is this happening? Like we know it's happening. We know that people are having these experiences because they're telling me, but from the expert level, from the like healthcare system level, is this actually happening? So it was really wonderful to hear that and to feel validated. Like, yeah, physicians are aware, they know what's going on. Providers, were telling me that these are the things and the struggles that people are having.
I'd like to remind the audience that if you have questions, please, please, please put them in the Q&A so we can ask them throughout the conversation. Sudi, over to you. Tell us your story, especially as it pertains towards all of this work, this reporting, this your journey with your own body image, and then these obesity drugs as well. Tell us your story.
I was born in Jamaica, and when I was young, I participated in dance, and I was in choir, and I was, um, was in karate and all these extracurricular activities. I wanted to be so many things when I was younger, when I grew up. And as I got older, my body image started to suffer. I remember being probably like 7, and some adult woman told me that I didn't have a shape. I'm not sure what that meant at that age, but that stuck with me. And then we moved to the States, I told one of my mom's coworkers that I wanted to be a model when I grew up, and she basically said that I would have to lose weight. And I think I was about 11 years old at that time. And that kind of started me into my disordered eating behaviors and going on diet after diet. However, I still was gaining weight, and despite telling my doctors that, I'm trying to eat healthy and exercise. Despite telling my doctors, it's like they didn't believe what I was saying.
Mhm,
Um, and so that definitely contributed to my um lack of trying to pursue my dreams and my goals. I
mhm,
definitely think my body image suffered because of that. And
mhm,
just having people tell me things about my body when they don't even know me as a person.
mhm,
Um, and anyway, I in about 2020, 2021, that's when I started discovering that there were medical providers and people in the eating disorder space that were weight inclusive and they believed in health at every size. And that was something brand new to me. I started seeing plus size women modeling, wearing bikinis, things I had never seen before and never thought possible for myself.
mhm,
Um, it was very eye-opening and just so it was like a breath of fresh air
Mhm.
seeing that there were people out there like me pursuing their dreams and people who actually believe that regardless of your weight, medical issues can happen
Mhm.
and that's not the only thing that you need to be focused on. So now I'm here. I am much happier with myself. I am pursuing my own business for plus size clothing, and I'm gonna model them.
There you go.
And so that's pretty much my journey from I was young to now.
There's this beautiful part in the kind of as toe-tos that Anissa and you did. This ending here that I really love, which you write, well, you both say, moving forward, I'm learning to dismantle my own internalized fat phobia and continue accepting myself. I still struggle with my ideal body type and what that would look like. My end goal is to understand that despite what body I reside in, I'm still worthy of pursuing happiness, joy, and having fun. Like, oof, that hits me in the soul there. How are you right now? Tell me a bit about where you are in that journey to dismantling your own internalized fat phobia and accepting your body.
Right. So I definitely, we all have internalized fat phobia. And this journey is never ending because one day I might have a bad body image day, and the next day I might think, oh, I'm the hottest thing on this planet right now. Um, so I definitely think the journey is something that will ebb and flow. And as far as I think your other question was about accepting myself. As far as accepting myself, I am, and I'm not waiting anymore to lose weight or to have this perfect body or this ideal body in order to follow my dreams because that may never happen. I have no way of predicting that. And so why not just start right now?
Mhm. Michelle, we're about to come to you, but Sudie, before we hop off from this part of the conversation, what would you say to the audience here? Many folks who are just like you, in terms of accepting their bodies, dismantling that fat phobia, the internalized fat phobia. What is your advice for people watching?
For anyone that has those body image issues and they're afraid to take the pictures and they're afraid to go out to the beach, I will just say that life is too short for you to have all of that stress and not pursue happiness and joy. And I feel that even when so you have those bad body image days, I feel that you just need to remind yourself that you are worthy of pursuing joy and pursuing your dreams, and don't let what society says stop you from doing that because you deserve it. And I think that that's my message is you deserve it, so just go for it.
Thank you, Sudie. Michelle, tell us your story as well.
Well, for me, my story, my journey with my weight, my body image, my self-perception, as well as what I heard around me, started when I was a young girl, a young preteen, if you will, 12 years old. I was always tall, and I grew up in the era of Black power. So please understand how important that was. In that age of the 60s,
Mhm.
mid 60s, when there was a lot of turmoil, I was the wrong shade of
Mhm.
Black. I always knew I was Black. My mother made sure. But my grandmother would put things in perspective for me and say, you were going to have a difficult journey, all of you, her grandchildren. And she would tell me the only benefit that I had was the fact that people would let me in the room and view me as less threatening. So I knew that I had a place It had nothing to do with my body, but I watched all my cousins who were cute, my sister, who's only 18 months younger than me, thin to this day. And they got more, they got to do more, they were not invisible. I was the invisible smart one. Through all of grade school, high school, as a young woman, and my perception of what I heard them say, the aunties and the grandmas, who all lived the same journey, and they didn't want it for me. They didn't want me to live the same journey where you're talked about, where your body shape, you're considered fat, you can't go shop in the nice section of the store because my size, the rack is real thin. And if you're a single digit, there's a plethora and it's colorful. So Sudi, I'll be one of your customers, okay? I'm just saying. But the choices weren't there. And so society is verbally and visually limiting your ability to visualize yourself. So my spot was to be smart. That was my way of compensating. Turned out to be good. Okay, I'm proud of what I've achieved. But I'm saying when Oprah started talking about her weight,
Right.
I related. And then all of a sudden I'm watching, I'm like, she thin, how'd she get thin? She had the same problems I do, how'd she get thin? And then I started seeing other people as well, and including people who are close friends, family. And I will confess, yes, I'm smart. Yes, I have achievements. I got awards on this wall. I would give anything. And there's a small part of me on the left side, you know, you got the right side person and the left side person, and the left side's going, boy, I'm sure jealous. Boy, don't they look good? Ooh, I just want one time, you know. That's the left side. The other side's, okay, get over it. Just as you said, Sudi. Don't let that perception that you're living with and what everybody else is telling you. You don't want to get to my decades of experience and realize you missed out on going to the beach in a cute swimsuit. I have never worn a bikini for that reason. I've never even tried one on. And that sounds minute and little, but it's kind of big. Wedding dresses, going shopping for a special occasion. And in my size, there was, you know, a few, and they were not flattering. And everybody else, you know, you see, and so for me, I would say two things. One, watch how we communicate to our younger selves and our younger family members and friends, because they can carry it with them, and it can impact that internal voice, no matter whatever else they do. All right, it really can. And I would say, let's focus on some of the positives that those people and everyone has, because we are more than what we physically look like. We're all going to get some gray hair. We're all going to get a little wider and a little slower, and the knees are going to get slower. You don't want just your external to be the only thing that people know you by.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. And one thing that really struck me about your story here, which you just also illustrated, was just this kind of almost feeling of jealousy that I'm sure many people are experiencing right now, seeing other folks who might be taking, you know, your Ozempics or your Wegovy's. Even here, you say, you know, if I could get Ozempic, you have no idea. And you were saying how, you know, I would take the medicine in a heartbeat if I could get it, even if it meant it would shorten my life. The people I love didn't die fast deaths, they suffered. So in my head, if I have a choice between going the way they went or going out in a way where I can achieve some part of my vision for myself, I'm down with it. Tell us a little bit more about that kind of that feeling of you know, seeing folks around you who may have taken Ozempic or taken some of these weight loss drugs and not getting the access to it yourself, and kind of how you feel about that.
I struggle with it, I'll be honest. I have tried. I've only tried once, and the healthcare provider told me that I I was not obese. I was overweight. And if you're in the overweight category, you just simply need to push back from the table. I have dieted, I have watched what I've eaten since I was 12. 12. Okay. And so this is not a vanity thing, it's been a struggle, lifelong. And for those who I love and respect who have been successful in getting it, I'm happy for them. Please don't misunderstand me. I have loved ones and good close friends, but some of us have not been able to get it. And some of us have been told it's all us. And yet, if I go to find fast food because I'm running errands for family members, the fast food is cheaper to do what I need to do family-wise or friend-wise. The fast food is cheaper on my budget than taking the time to go buy groceries and cook. Okay, that is real. And the groceries I would buy would be much healthier for me, but the cost. And so you struggle with, I can't get the medication that everybody else is getting, that's seemingly making it easier for them and health-wise. I cannot, with the economy the way it is, and I'm not blaming the economy, I'm just saying real facts. The groceries are higher, quality food is higher than cheap and fast, so that you can live your life. So it's a struggle for me. My intellect gets it. That 12-year-old girl that lives right here, who just wanted one time to be the cute one.
Michelle, thank you. Thank you. Devon, you took some magnificent, stunning photos here, including photos of Sudi. Tell us a bit about being a part of this project and the importance that these images bring to these stories.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to like creating photography, I come from a background of like learning the history of photography and how it's been used. And since learning that history, like as Crystal mentioned about Sarah Bartman, like it's always been really important for me to kind of fight back against that in the ways that I can, by imagining more, for myself, for my community, and for people of the diaspora in general. So for me, when being a part of this project, I would say like my initial approach is, from when Crystal asked me, it was essentially, make it tender, make it intimate, make it feel like you're right there with the person. So that's been my approach. And being able to like work with Sudi and work with Jonathan, really allowed me to kind of like, they invited me in their space, and just get a chance to talk with them, get to know a little bit more about them, and then have that reflected onto the photographs that I'm creating. So which I'm entirely grateful for, being able to kind of collaborate on image making in that way. Because I always see it as much as like as a process. It's never just my singular input. It's always that collaborative effort that's there. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say for in trying to create this project and making sure that like everyone's hand that I'm talking to and engaging with is involved, and that they're feeling comfortable more than anything, so that I can capture those moments of like joy or just like as rest, or even capturing like the really intimate parts. For example, I had, when I was working with Jonathan, in his home, in his apartment, he showed me actually the process of like taking the Ozempic, which I've never seen before. So being able to kind of like capture that was a really human aspect and humanizing just look into how this medication is a part of his daily life, and how he's also managing his own self-image, his own kind of just like medical intake. So yeah.
And for the audience out there, you can read more about Jonathan's story in an accompanying piece that Anissa did called New Obesity Drugs Are Seemingly Everywhere. Black Americans Feel Left Out. And Devon, tell us a little bit more about kind of, what you learned from taking these photos. As you said, this is your first time, in Jonathan's case, seeing someone, inject themselves with Ozempic. were there any, I don't know, preconceived notions you may have had that were dispelled by being with someone who had used this? For many of us, we hear about these drugs. I hear about them all the time, and I myself don't know someone who's using it. Though I know there probably are certainly many people in my life who may be using it. But what was it like for you to, attach a face to something that's been in the media for been so buzzy in the media?
That's a really great question. I would say at first, I think my first kind of like inclination of Ozempic was definitely seeing celebrities and seeing like, the gossip blogs talking about like, oh, look at this person who, has lost a lot of weight and, they're looking like they have what do they call it? Like an Ozempic face where it's like the head is bigger than the body. So I think in terms of that, it was very sensationalized. And almost kind of like shunned upon, especially because of, the people who were using it in that public eye. Were probably not people that necessarily needed it in that regard, but just were able to access it because of, their class or, because of money and status. But however, like when meeting with Jonathan, I was able to kind of like really just see like, okay, like this is just, as if it's a simple kind of like, prick and it's done. And seeing that how simple it was and seeing how it was, you just kind of like one and done, take it as you need to. It really kind of just like, okay, like this isn't the kind of medication that's like seen as bad. It's more so it's necessary for a lot of people who are, working or managing with diabetes in that regard. Um, so yeah, in terms of just like those kind of myths, like just seeing how instead of seeing it as like, people only using it for just the weight loss and actually seeing like the real life benefits for people who really need it, who are, getting that treatment as they need to, and, working with that in a very simple way.
Thank you, Devon. And I want to get to some of the questions now because this Q&A is buzzing, definitely. But before I do that, I just want to take a moment to share some of the love that you all are getting in the chat here. I mean, Paige is saying that she loves the transparency from Sudi and Michelle. Rodrigo says, real facts, Michelle. Elizabeth is saying, I bet that 12-year-old girl was adorable in relation to your story, Michelle, there. And Candace is sharing some hugs there. Sharing some hugs. So, we have a colleague here we have a question here from my colleague, Usha Lee McFarling, who's also on the health equity beat. And she wants to know, what made you, Sudi and Michelle, brave enough to open yourselves up to Anissa, to tell your stories, and why and how you were willing to trust, both Stat and Warden Black to tell these stories, truthfully without, any kind of anything that would be exploitive in that sense. Like as Damon said, you hear this story all the time, buzzing in the media and everything, but Word and Black and Sat here wanted to tell the people the actual lives behind these stories behind Ozempic, behind these body weight issues. So tell us a bit about what made you both brave enough to share your stories. And I'll start with you, Sudi.
Well, for me, I first saw the survey shared by a healthcare provider that I follow and trust. And so when I took the survey and then I heard from Anissa, I said, you know what, I'm gonna talk to her. And I think it was a combination of just wanting to see, just curiosity, wanting to see what the project was about. And then also me just being tired of weight stigma and fat phobia. And I wanted to contribute in any way that I could to any kind of research that kind of dispels that, or any kind of research that shows fat people or people in larger bodies in a more positive light. So that is the reason why I trusted Anissa with my story. And she was also very validating, and just was an active listener. And that's something that people don't do when you are in a larger body. They do not listen to you. They don't believe what you're saying. Your experiences mean nothing. Your fatness is your fault. And so that was very validating thing. So that's why I trusted her. And that's why I decided to open up.
Thank you, Sudi. And Michelle, what about yourself?
I really don't have anything to add. She hit it. She boom.
Period.
She really did because, but I will say that the trust that I felt from Anissa, because I was skeptical, I was willing but skeptical, but she made me feel comfortable. She made me feel like what she got from me was not going to be abused. And when you have gone to other people in the health community who you assume will be advocating for you. Now, understand, I work in healthcare. I have for years as a corporate trainer, but still in that world. And you have not been listened to, heard, validated, etc. And here's this young woman. I got granddaughters her age, okay? Okay. But I'm saying, so I was a little reluctant, but she gave me that trust and sense that this was not going to be abused. It might not be listened to by the recipient, but she was going to put together a compelling set of data or information. She was going to control her part for the messaging so it wouldn't be abused. I wouldn't feel. So and it didn't, then what I saw the articles, I was just like, and if it helps one person who looks like us to feel validated and heard and to have a better process going forward and not wait as long as I have to feel enough and okay.
Yes.
It's worth it for me.
Thank you, Michelle. And let me just say that you certainly are enough. Thank you for sharing as well. Crystal, go right ahead, and then I have another question here from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about the photographers on that aspect of trust. Some of the photographers that I worked with for this project, I had worked with in the past. However, like because I was prioritizing, a lot more Black photographers to at least have folks that Anissa had interviewed relate on that experience at, at least a base level. So I was doing some digging. I used Black Women Photograph. I used Women Photograph as a database to look for folks. And I hopped on the phone and, was able to kind of, gather, gauge people's interest. And, make sure that it would be a good working relationship between the photographer and the participant. And the thing that we like to say is, photographers aren't necessarily taking folks' portraits, but they're making them in collaboration with a person. And that was something I was definitely, wanted to make sure that we were looking for. And Devon did such a beautiful job. Like I think I emailed Devon immediately afterwards. And said, like, I clapped. I was like, Devon in my email, I clapped after looking at these photos. So I think that was, there's a lot of beautiful collaboration amongst photographers and participants. And hopefully, I heard nothing back, but, good feedback that folks felt like trusted and seen and heard during that process.
Thank you, Crystal. Anissa, you're unmuted. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I could cry, but I don't cry in front of people. I will say it's very validating to know like what I heard from Sudi and Michelle, because that is exactly what I wanted, to feel like safe with your stories and that you trusted me. Like it's really a privilege and an honor to know that throughout the whole process and even like the published piece that you were so happy with it, because that was my intention. So yeah, I'm so grateful that I was able to work on this project with so many amazing people.
So I definitely want to get more into topics of like access and kind of stigma and all of that as well. But before we do that, we have this question here from Paige Booker, who asked, was there anything really surprising that came out of the project for the journalists or participants that they'd like to share? Anissa and Crystal, I'll start with you both. Was there anything particularly surprising from your reporting, from talking with sources like Sudi and Michelle, that came out from this project?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the stories that I found particularly surprising. I interviewed a non-binary person named Brandon, and they were very vocal and honest about like the abuse that they experienced as a child and how they used food as a comfort, but also their weight as a protection. And I think up until that point, they were one of like my last interviews, and it was just very surprising. It was something that hadn't come up. It was something that I didn't really know about in the research, but I just thought it was a really unfortunate experience, but also something really important to include in these stories. So I would say that was probably one of the most surprising things.
Mhm. Crystal, anything particularly surprising from your perspective?
Um, gosh, I mean, definitely as Anissa mentioned about Brandon, but I would say I think more so like confirming about like some folks that Anissa interviewed who were diabetic or who are diabetic and not having access. So basically kind of as we were wrapping up the project, and I think maybe we ended up having two folks who were able to access the medication. So I guess just confirming and like the numbers and like what we're hearing and what we're seeing, that was definitely something that stood out to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Crystal, could you speak a little bit more to, I guess, that access aspect about it? As you said, so two folks who you had interviewed, what exactly were able to get access to this, who were struggling to get access to it?
Gosh, I believe, if I'm not remembering, or if I'm remembering correctly, but Jonathan, and I want to say maybe Tim,
Yeah, Timothy.
like they were able to access. And I think at one point Anissa had maybe interviewed Jonathan, or maybe it was Tim, and they hadn't had access at that point during the interview, and then later on ended up having being able to get their medication like, you know, months later. So that was definitely something that was interesting and stood out to me. um yeah, and I think gosh, I feel like there was one other person that maybe is diabetic who wasn't able to access and had to pay out of pocket. So just kind of like seeing what those numbers are and like how much Deborah, I want to say, was the person, and you know how much money folks have to pay for this medication that is necessary for, you know, their diabetes.
Mhm. Thank you. Anissa, any other thoughts on the access aspect to this, especially as it came up in the reporting here?
Yeah, I will add, I think it's really interesting that out of the 14 people that I interviewed for the Voices piece, the two men that were interviewed are also the only two that were able to access Ozempic. So that is interesting. In terms of access, it was touched on throughout, but I think because of how it's basically blown up in the media and social media, and celebrities talking about it, Oprah, people that have money can just pay out of pocket to get Ozempic. So if you're just a regular person who's working a 9 to 5 or trying to put food on the table, paying $1,000 out of pocket is not realistic. People don't have that type of money on hand. So then you see this imbalance of who actually needs the medication, who qualifies for it, but they can't afford it or their insurance doesn't cover it. So there's just a lot of discrepancies and disparities in the access to GLP-1 medications like Ozempic. But another thing I did want to mention is that there was some studies, I want to say from last year, earlier this year, that showed Black people are less likely to be like prescribed GLP-1 medications in comparison to white Americans. So there's that as well, the racial disparities aspect.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Anissa. It you know, segues pretty well into this question here from one of our viewers, April Mims, who asks, first says, thank you for this important conversation. I recall in the stat article that one interviewee discussed how companies that promote these drugs don't care about Black people and Black voices. How can providers, companies that manufacture these drugs or connect patients to the drugs, how can they be more culturally competent? And he said, I'll stick with you, and then I'll ask the rest of the panelists for their thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like that's the golden question. Like on one end, because I'm talking to a lot of equity leaders and healthcare providers and just people that have this experience or are in this health space, there are people that are trying to shift the tide and make medications like this more accessible. But historically, these pharmaceutical companies, have not shown that they care about their patients, have not shown that it's really anything other than about the money. So I don't really know what the answer is, but I think on a smaller level, on a level that probably is what's not reachable, but something that people can do on the everyday level is, if you're a healthcare provider, if you're in that space meeting with Black patients, listen.
Mhm.
Like, take the time, take an extra few minutes to listen to your patients, to ask some questions, to give them the opportunity to ask questions as well. Don't treat them like, oh, this is just my list of patients for the day and I'm just going to go on to the next. Like, these are people with lives and experiences and health issues, or maybe not even health issues. Like, they just care about their health and they want to stay on the right track to live healthier lives. So I think give them the time of day and give them a listening ear.
Sudhi, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this as well, because from what I remember from your story in here, there's this line where you were talking to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, like, you can't be happy if you're overweight. I don't care what any of them say, they're not happy. Those are really strong words to come from your doctor. And I can only imagine how that could make you feel. Someone telling you, I don't care what you're saying, what you think you're experiencing, you're not happy. Oh, talk to us a little bit about, what providers can do to be better and to be more culturally competent, especially in as they're dealing with patients like yourself.
I think what Anissa was saying about just listening to your patients is the number one thing, and believing what they're saying. I remember I went to the hospital because I was experiencing stomach pains that was also like radiating to my back. And I sat in the ER parking lot for like 15 minutes debating on whether or not I should go in, because I just knew they were going to say something about my weight. And this is why your stomach hurts, because you're overweight. Um, but I went in and the doctor said nothing about my weight. In fact, he ordered test after test. When I said, he first gave me like some concoction to drink and it didn't help. And when he came in, I actually said, he asked me, "Are you feeling better?" And I wasn't, but instead of saying no, I was like, "I'm okay." But he took that to mean, okay, you're not okay. Let's run some more tests. And I think that's a very important, like, part of cultural competency, is to realize, especially women might not say what they actually mean, because we don't want to seem like we're, stepping on toes or bothering people, especially people in larger bodies where it's like, you're not going to believe me anyway. Um, so I think it turns out I had gallbladder issues and needed surgery. So it's a good thing. So listening to your patients and really understanding that everybody's experience, depending on their race or their body size or their gender, really has an impact in how they're going to interact with you.
Mhm. Thank you, Sudhi. Michelle, we have a question here from Liz in the audience that I think you might be able to provide some insight on. And Liz's question is, do you have insights for how Black folk who need weight loss medication should handle being told by their doctors that they don't qualify or end up having their health concerns dismissed? Michelle, from my understanding, you were told that you don't qualify. What was that moment like? And, do you wish it was said some other way to you?
The moment for me, um, I felt not heard, but I also felt ashamed of myself for even asking. As a
Mm,
result of the response, I felt ashamed of myself because at my age, I should know better. Let's face it. I have lived through some decades of discrimination. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. And so I should know better. Okay. My grandkids shouldn't, because they haven't had to live through being the Black person who walked in the door that said 4 words only. They don't have the lived experience. So they still have hope. They still have belief. I know better. So for me to put myself, be vulnerable, and say, please, can I have this too? Like some other people that I love and respect and friends have. And to be told, no, you just need to push back from the table, girlfriend. Okay. And gotta go see another patient. I should know better. And so I felt bad. What would I like them to do? I would like them to listen. And I want to piggyback on what Sudi said, because I don't think they always go the extra 5 minutes when they're searching. Remember, I'm a trainer. I have, for 8 years, I did healthcare training on software. I don't think they always go and do that extra search when they're searching for the diagnosis or the issue or whatever, and say, if this person is an African American or a person of color, is there any other consideration that I need to be aware of that may impact? And I think it's critical, because we aren't all the same. I know we like to say that, but we're not. Okay. And I won't bore you with a story that happened to me, health related, where I almost died, literally because of a medication that they didn't check to make sure that medication, if there was a history, and there is a known history documented of taking this particular medicine by Black women, and but I literally almost died, literally. But I'm saying all that to say, to me, what she's saying, that it happens in maternity, weight, high blood pressure, gallbladder, etc. And it is critical that all of it be taken into consideration, and access and culture, because it does make a difference. My sister almost died because they didn't take in consideration the fact that she had toxemia and was pregnant. Literally almost died. Literally. I almost lost my only sister, my only sibling. So I'm saying these things are critical and they're important. I wish healthcare providers would take us, what we look like, into consideration, and what our cultural needs may be, and cultural access.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. And any other thoughts from the panelists on Michelle's words there, or on this idea of access and cultural competency with these drugs?
I will just add, because I was kind of looking through the comments, I agree that patient literacy and coming prepared with questions and all of these things are important. But at the end of the day, it's a provider's job to take care of your health, to make sure that you're on the right track. If you're coming in with something that doesn't feel right, take the time to listen to them. Like, well, I get so frustrated because the burden and the onus shouldn't be on the patient. It's the health provider, it's the healthcare provider. And it's just like, it's a whole ecosystem. And I've written so many other stories about this, but I just think if we could just shift this whole narrative of like a patient needs to come in prepared with everything. If a provider isn't going to listen, that's not going to change if I have questions ready. Like, that's just a fact. So I don't know what else needs to happen, but some training, some culturally competent care training, everything, like keeping in mind no two people are alike, no matter what algorithms say, no matter what a city, like, it's just to keep in mind that every individual is different and their healthcare should be like cared for as from an individual standpoint, not from this stereotypical group standpoint.
Thank you, Anissa. I have a few closing questions in my head, but before we get to those, Anissa, while I have you, quickly, Sean Chavez asks a bit about how can local journalists do similar stories like this, or tell the stories about, what's going on in their communities. They say, I hear so many things anecdotally about access to medical care, doctors who understand obesity as well as access to the medications, or who don't understand it. I think those stories are underreported locally. Any advice for local journalists who may be on the call here or on this Zoom wanted to do similar kind of reporting?
I would say start with your network. A lot of times the thing about health, which is why it's such a passionate beat of mine, is that everyone is impacted by health. So I would say start with your current sources, with your local network, and start with advocates. A lot of times they're very well connected, or community leaders, with people that are on the ground that are trying to make a change or that have lived experience. So I would just say start there, and always ask a source, can you put me in touch with somebody else? Because that could lead you to so many different places.
We have a question here from another colleague from mine, actually, Alexandra Howley, who asks, who do you hope reads these stories, and what impact do you hope it can have on the healthcare system? I'll start with you, Devon, actually. Who do you hope sees your images? Who do you hope sees these beautiful portraits, photos of these people who are going through these issues, who are dealing with these struggles to access all of the stigma and body care? Who do you hope sees this, and what do you hope it says to them?
I would say definitely, folks who like are in a similar spot from reading these stories definitely deserve to hear that so that they feel very much affirmed in that space, to also know that they're not alone. And also for like the folks who have not heard or maybe not experienced those same kind of body issues, just to bring about that kind of awareness that like, that's needed, especially, if it's like another doctor or someone who's outside of that, to kind of provide that empathy so that we're, I feel like everyone is a mirror. Like we have to kind of like see that so that we can be that, and also, care for one another in that way, in regards to, how we feel about ourselves and how we treat other people when we're um not judging them off of how they look, but just like what the content of their character is, and not just basing it off of, the shape of their body, if anything. So yeah.
Thank you, Devon. And Crystal, what about yourself? Who do you hope reads this? What do you hope they take away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I could say all the things that Devon just said, but in addition to that, I would say I think of like young Black and brown children, students. I think a lot of the things that we see in these stories are disheartening and sad, and it shows that like the system has let the Black community down a lot. However, it's showing that the folks that have participated in this, and in the Black and brown community, overcome and are empowered, and speak up and advocate for themselves, and get the care that they need. And I think that that would be really inspiring and good knowledge for young Black and brown children to have in their like resource kit.
Thank you. I have a final question for Sudi and Michelle, but before I ask that last question, Anissa, what about yourself? Who do you hope reads this? What do you hope they take away from it? And what
Yeah.
do you think the healthcare system could get from it?
I would love to see this story read and like understood by people in positions of power, policymakers, people that can actually make a change. I mean, I can write all day, and there's so many incredible reporters that are reporting on this, on these topics, on health equity or inequities. But if it's not getting in the right hands, not much is going to change, and we're going to stay talking about the same problem. So I would love for people that are at whatever top leaders in the healthcare system, in the hospital system, at the clinic level, to like start making some changes, start making it more accessible for people to access healthcare.
Mhm. Thank you. One of the beautiful things about this project is that, Anissa, you asked, and some of the participants in there wrote little letters to their younger selves. And Sudi, I'm going to read yours out, where you write, Sudi, I admire your bravery, kindness, and sensitivity. You belong in this world. Take up as much space as you can and hold on to your values. You are worthy of all your dreams. What do you think those words would have meant to a younger Sudi?
Wow. I think that, when I was younger, I had more confidence, like really young, about 4 or 5. I had a lot more confidence. And as I got older, um, my confidence definitely dropped. And I feel like those words would have meant so much to me, um, in not giving up and not going in a shell. And that's what I think that stopped me from pursuing my dreams, is that I just kind of made myself smaller and smaller, personality wise. And like, I wasn't as much of a go-getter that I was before. And so I think that that would have made me open up more and take up more space, whether physically now or like figuratively. I would have continued to take up space and followed my dreams.
Thank you, Sudi. And then to end us off here, Michelle, you start off your story here talking about yourself when you were a young girl. You say, as a young girl, I can vividly remember turning 12 and being at that family barbecue, and the elders talking about how fat I was and how I would be fat and look like the rest of the women in the family. And so often when we're young, some of our first bullies are the people we love the most. I'd love to give you also that opportunity. If you were to talk to your 12-year-old self, 12-year-old Michelle, who Elizabeth here said, I bet that 12-year-old girl was adorable. What would you say to her?
I would tell her in hindsight, don't listen to them. You are more than your body. There's more to you that you have to offer, that you can put out into this world and be true to you and help somebody else. Because one of the things that has always been important in my life is being helpful. I grew up and was trained to be helpful, right? And in looking back, as a result of this project, Crystal and Anissa, I want you to know this. As a result of this project, I went back and found all the pictures that I had and my mother had, and etc. And I have a gallery wall now. And it shows me every day when I pass up those steps that I am more than that 12-year-old body, that I've done more, I've contributed. If I were to go today, I can honestly say I have loved ones who can say, you know what, remember when Aunt Shell did? It was awesome. Remember when Meemaw did? That was the bomb. I have colleagues who still reach out to me after 10, 15 years and say, girl, remember that project we worked on? So I would tell that 12-year-old body, forget what they're saying. Go on and do you, because you are more than that little round tummy and them little hips and the extra I've always had. I was more, and I had value, and I wasted a lot of years not knowing that.
Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much. Whew, you have me teared up here too. We're at time here. I know we could keep this conversation going, and I just want to say again, thank you all so much for sharing your stories, for sharing your vulnerabilities here. I'd love if people in the chat could kind of give a little, virtual round of applause to our guests here. And again, thank you so much to Devon, to Anissa, to Michelle, to Sudi, and to Crystal for bringing together this project and for sharing yourselves, so much of yourselves with us here today. So thank you. And thank you all in the audience for some really great questions as well. Thanks again to Word in Black for partnering with us on this event, and to all of you out there for taking time to join us. Our upcoming annual flagship STAT Summit will be taking place on October 16th to October 17th in Boston and virtually. STAT will gather together industry leaders to cover some of the biggest challenges of people who want to move advances out of the lab and into the world. More information can be found on our website at statnews.com/events. Thank you all again. And I just want to let you all know that you are worth it. You are all valuable. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.